Today we're going to talk about strategic thinking. Many of us have heard about strategic planning. Many of us have been involved with strategic planning. But how many of us do strategic thinking? When I have an opportunity to interview and speak with presidents and CEOs, project managers, chairmen, I ask them, what do you wish your leadership team paid more attention to? What do you wish they did more of? Many times the answer is, I wish they would think strategically. So today we're going to talk about strategic thinking. We're going to talk about 3 specific things. One, we're going to talk about strategic posture. What does that mean? Then we're going to look at how do we increase our return on investment. How do we focus so that we get the greatest leverage or the greatest return for what we do? And the third thing is a jewel. Many people don't know what makes something strategic. After today, when you meet with someone or they come to you and say, this is a strategy we're going to use, ask them, what makes it strategic? And if they can't answer, you can help them. Strategic planning isn't planning for the future. Rather, it is thinking about the future of our present decisions. So let's talk about how we're going to frame our future decisions so that we can plan to get greater results, okay? The future of our present decisions. Now here's why this is important. The game has changed, so the way we play the game has to change. See, many companies, they were caught either between the status quo or a crisis. Oh, this is a problem, so let me do this, and they run and do this. Whew, wow, got that done. So then they go back into normalcy, complacency mode. Next crisis, so they do this little dance, okay? We don't want the dance. The process many companies have gone through to stop this dance. And see if you can identify with this. First they said, we must reorganize. Been there? Yes. Let's re-engineer. Did that. Then they realign. Now they say we've got to realize we need to do something else. We need to think differently. So it's not about re-engineering, reorganizing, realigning. All those things are not enough if we don't learn to think strategically. One of my favorite quotes is from Schopenhauer. He said, thus, the task is not so much to see what no one else has seen, but rather to think what no one else has thought about that which everyone sees. Everybody sees the same thing. But how can we think what they have not thought? Because that enables you to position your company, your organization, and yourself. Because many people say, how can I elevate myself within my organization? How can I increase my value to the organization? If you increase your thinking, you ask questions they can answer. They now understand your value to the organization. Are you with me? Let's talk about the key parts of strategic posturing, which form the framework for strategic thinking. One of the great things about strategy is we don't know if our strategy was successful till hindsight. We don't know that our strategy for this game, for this product, for this new launch was successful until after the fact. Then we know it was good. That's why when we study strategy, we always go to the furthest part of history. We go to the Orient. So here are the symbols that the Orient uses when they talk about strategic posturing. The first would be, and you can think of it as a triangle with a point or fire We want to blaze a trail with this product to the new market. We want to lay the track. You know, you're just on the cutting edge of what's happening. That's one posture. So they think of fire as blazing a trail. You know, the Orient uses natural symbols for everything. So fire, blazing a trail. That's the first posture. The second, they think of the earth or the mountains. Because after the storm, the mountains will still be here. So if you're going through a turbulent time, and your company wants to establish a strategic posture that says we're going to weather the storm, they might want to take a position of the mountains. And we call that one stillness. It's stillness. The fire in blazing the trail, that's the offensive. You are first to market. Aggressive, fire. Stillness. Now, the third element that the Orient uses is wind or water, because that is flexibility. If you notice, water always finds a way to get around the obstacles, right? And the ultimate flexibility for a business is when the competition tries to mimic you, you just turn and do something else. Have you ever tried to hold wind? You can't. So they'll never be able to catch you. You'll always be in a winning position. But before you can develop your strategic plan, your product, what is our posture? Because if your posture is first to market, your approach is going to be totally different than if it's stillness and holding the ground. You need to understand. So one of the things you can do is think about what your company is doing. What is the position that they're taking on certain things? What are the initiatives they're working on? And that can give you a clue to the strategic thinking of the leadership of the organization. They might say, okay guys, we need to pull back a little bit. Let's hunker down and weather the storm. And so think of the triangle as your innovators. Think of a square. I use a square for the mountains. I'm going to reserve my right to play. I'm not going to do anything offensive right now. We're going to hold on to the cash. We're going to not go out too much. And then a circle for our adapters. So think of that as the three strategic postures. And when you think of the first to market, it is you're setting the standard. No one saw you coming. Can you think of a company that launched a new product or a new presence that no one saw coming? The element of surprise in strategy. The element of surprise. That is with the offensive. No one saw it coming. All of a sudden, you're there. Second approach, stillness. And we can think of a lot of companies. The key to stillness is we're going to invest to protect. That's the protection mode we get into. Let's make sure that we are here for the long term. Then we go to, and we can think of that as dynamic stillness. Dynamic stillness. The mountains are dynamic and they're still. You can think of major corporations. That would be a good way. And of course, your flexibility is anyone that changes position. Can you think of a company that was in a product line maybe 3 years ago, and today they're doing something totally different? They used that flexibility, the water. They saw a potential obstacle, or it would be too hard to compete, so they say, okay, let's get around that and now do something else. It could be with a new product offering, it could be with an absolutely new form of business, or many times it's a merger. And so the first thing in strategic thinking is, what posture do we want to take? Oh, the next thing is so important. Because many things are competing for our time, our resources, and we know that not every goal is equal. You have 5 things you want to purchase, 5 things you want to do, 4 initiatives for the company. Where do you put your resources behind? Which one has the greatest opportunity to give you that return on investment? In other words, what we're going to try to do in this next portion, which is called the strategic focus, is how do we align our strategies to get the maximum result? Think of potentially lining up, whether it is dominoes, cards, bricks, where you can hit one and it ripples through everything else. So for the same amount of effort, instead of hitting 4 different targets, dividing yourself 4 different ways, you hit one and you get maximum result from that one strategic decision. That's what we're going to learn about next. So let's take a look at our handouts. You have a handout with 4 numbers. Let's say you have 4 goals, 4 initiatives. The key thing to maximizing return on investment is to establishing a relationship between those 4 goals. Let's say goal number 1, in your mind, was the most important thing, and you were going to put all your resources behind this. An interesting thing can happen after you go through this exercise. Because in this exercise, we want to establish a relationship between every goal. So you will have arrows and lines going between 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. And you want to ask yourself, what is the driver in that relationship? What's the driver between 2 and 3? Does 2 cause 3 to happen? Or 3 causes 2 to happen? Now, some of you might say, well, none really has an effect on each other. It's neutral. I want to encourage you not to draw dual arrows because that negates each other. Really ask yourself, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What has more of an impact on the other? Does this impact it or does that impact it? And you should have, since we have 4 goals, you should have 3 lines going in or out of each goal. One of the interesting things that we often see is you might think that number 1 was your number 1 goal. And when we're finished drawing the arrows and their relationship with the arrowhead, we now find that number 3 was really the most important. How do we know that number 3 was the most important? It had 3 arrows going out. The goal that has the greatest number of arrows going out is the driving goal, the one that has an impact on everything else. The goal that has the most arrows coming in is the recipient, and we certainly wouldn't want to put all our resources there. For example, let's say you were focusing on goal number 1, and let's say that was product development. You had a new product you wanted to bring to market. And let's say another goal was, say, customer service, and you had a goal to improve efficiency, and you had maybe a goal for training. You might think that product development is where you need to put all your resources because, after all, we need a new product. When you finish establishing the relationship between your various goals, you could find out that efficiency is where you need to focus your energies. Maybe that has the drivers. It could be training. That might have the drivers. Customer service. Look at the initiative, the goal that has the maximum drivers. Okay? Now that we know where we get our maximum return on investment, let's turn the page and look at how we establish strategy. How do we make sure that what we're doing is strategic? See, many people say, we have a strategy to do this, and we have 3 strategic goals. How do they know that they are strategic? Something is only strategic if it moves you forward to your goal, if it moves you and gives you an unfair advantage, element of surprise, if it speeds up your chances of success, then it's strategic. Otherwise, it's just a nice thing to do. In this first box, write the word goal. Any goal you might have. And in the top box, we want to talk and label this box critical success factors. That's the label for this box. And we're going to talk about critical success factors. Those are the things that absolutely must go right if we want to be successful. What are the things that need to be critical for your success? A new product launch. It could be first to market. It could be expanding a product line. What is critical for you to meet this goal? Then in the second box, we want to label that barriers. If we were not successful, what could stand in our way of success? Let's say we wanted to have a new facility. One of the critical success factors would certainly be having the cash, the down payment for the new building, the new facility, the new equipment. A potential barrier could be, do we have the funds to keep that going? Do we have the cash flow, the working capital? So we need to take a look at critical success factors and barriers. Those 2 things help us to focus so that we are able to develop strategies. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about. How do we develop strategies? We talk about it, but what are the components? And the components are critical success factors and barriers. So let's take a look at the second half of our sheet. Here are 2 things I would like you to write on these arrows. Meets. It meets. It addresses is another word. It achieves, meets, M-E-E-T-S. And on this line, write the word overcome. Overcome. You see, the critical thing we're looking for here is our strategies. Now, many people say, my goal is to buy a new building. Okay, then let's go ahead and start putting a project team together to source the best place, right? Or let's put a cross-functional team to head this up. How do you know what they need to head up? You have no clue. Because you don't know what's critical for success, and you have no idea what the barriers are. But once you know that, you can say, if a critical success factor is cash, what strategy, this is the box of strategy, what strategy do I need to put in place to meet that critical success factor? What strategy do I put in place to obtain the cash? What strategy do I put in place to obtain the funding? You don't know the strategy unless you know what's critical. The next question to ask would be, what strategies would I need to put in place to overcome a barrier? If my barrier is cash flow, what strategy am I going to put in place to increase my cash flow? Maybe I need to put in a new accounts receivable system so that I can collect money faster. Maybe I need to offer a lower priced option so that I will get a greater quantity. When you know what you need to meet and what you need to overcome, everything you do strategically advances you towards the goal. Strategy is not a word we pull out of the hat. Strategy is something that's carefully crafted. It takes a posture so that your modus operandi is based upon that posture, based upon the culture of the organization. Are we aggressive or are we more conservative? It is based upon thinking, and thinking strategically, which says, where am I going to put my resources to get the maximum return on investment? And what am I going to think about to make sure that every strategy is truly strategic? I want to tell you a story. I got really excited when I got an assignment. The phone rang and it said, we're looking for a strategic planner to help us with the Olympics. That's a pretty big deal, right? I'm getting excited. You know, important gig, engagement. Little did I know, I was going to be working on garbage trucks. Yes, garbage. You see, what they wanted was someone to help them build a master schedule of all the activities they had to do between January 1st and July 1st when the Olympics started. No, I wasn't literally riding on the garbage trucks, but I was in charge of making sure the city was clean. As a business person, you know the questions to ask, you know the people to deal with to get the job done, don't we?
Yes.
Guess what? Your clients don't always tell you what they're looking for. Sometimes they don't know what they're looking for. Or they have a big plan and they divvied up each portion of the plan to a different project team, and you're unaware of what's going on in another part of the company, particularly if you work for a multinational. To increase your effectiveness, one of the key things you have to understand is what is the objective. But the objective given is not always the objective. We're talking about increasing, expanding our effectiveness. The way we do that is to go as high in the organization as you can and ask a visual question. That is very key, a visual question. Because what we don't know intuitively to tell, as they say, a picture paints a thousand words. So what I did, I went as high in the organization as I could and asked this visual question. Pretend that the Olympics are over and you're at a major event and everybody is clapping each other on the back and high fives and handshakes. The Olympic was a huge success. With respect to my project, the Clean Sweep project, what has to happen? The answer to that opened my eyes. The gentleman said that we attract more international business to the city. I was focusing on the goal of the Olympics. The Olympics was not the goal. The Olympics was the strategy to get to the goal. Now I ask you, in the projects that you're working on at work right now, are you focusing on what they've asked you to do? Or are you going beyond what they've asked you to do? When you go beyond, you're able to get a better context of what the issue is. Therefore, you're able to solve it and help them achieve better results. One of my favorite quotes is from the book, The Road to CEO. Now, everybody might want to be a CEO, but we all report to one. So it helps to know how they think and what they want. The Road to CEO says, today's knowledge workers have a much greater shot at success if they can think strategically, motivate people, and look and act as leaders. Today, we have looked at one key part of that equation, learning to think strategically. The new marketplace today demands different thinking. We can't do the dance between a critical crisis and status quo. We have to think strategically, and we have to think about the future of our present decisions. Those decisions are far more successful if we learn to think and act strategically.